Good morning, welcome to CBC Business Interview. It's good to be back, and we are live again today, Wednesday, with Mr. Chizu. Mr. Chizu, welcome to CBC.
My pleasure, sir.
How have you been?
Wow, God has been blessing me. I can't complain. Things are good.
Okay.
Yes.
It's good to see you on Business Interview.
Great.
After a long time.
Great. How have you been yourself?
Fine, and it's good to be back. Today we are looking at action.
Yes.
What has action got to do with the business undertakings, especially on the issue of the core value? Why should it be the core issue?
Yes, I think action is very important in business because you find that if you act, you are likely to accomplish far much more than if you were just to wait seated. You wait needlessly. So it is important that when you have a program, when you have your plans, your business plans, when you have whatever dream or vision for business, it has to be accompanied with action in order for you to achieve results. One thing that you have to notice that action is the only thing amongst everything else that is able to make any person or a business to achieve something. And achievement in itself is success. So a person of action, or rather a business that accompanies its programs and visions and dreams with action, is the business that is able to be successful. Right. I think that is one important thing of action. Then the second thing that you note about action is that when you act, action itself, removes the fear. Right. It conquers fear. And when fear is conquered, it means that you have cultivated courage within yourself and within your business undertakings. And courage by its nature, courage by itself, is the measure of a big soul. So we love to measure up. And it is important that as we measure up, in situations where we are devastated with calamity, or rather sorrow, or any disaster, it's important that we get busy doing something. As we get busy doing something, it means that our minds and our hands are going to be occupied with action. Right. And as we act, we'll find that we are going to achieve much more and encourage ourselves much more than anything else can do in this life. I think that is the second point. The third point that we need to realize is the fact that we are hunters in the jungle of life. And as we hunt in the jungle of life, there are mountains to climb, rivers to cross, incurring loss of sleep, and so many other difficulties. But the anticipation of the hunter who has paid such a high price of doing all these things that we have talked about in terms of acting and action, you know, the expectations of the reap or the achievement is so glorious and huge at the end of it all. And like somebody who has just sat and folded his arms doing nothing, that is fantasy. That is daydreaming. And such kind of a situation has got no reality to it. And it has never produced anything in this life. And I think, having talked about that point, I think we must also note that when you act, when you accompany everything with your action, it means that you are practicing such a thing. And you know, it's important that we practice whatever that we have learned and whatever that we have been taught. As we continuously practice it, then we'll get what we want out of it. But if we are not practicing, what will happen is success itself and achievement itself that we have talked about, that comes as a result of action, is going to grow wings and fly away from us if we are able to get into our slumber. So that is another important thing about action. So it's very important that whatever that we do, action should rate as a priority, because a true real executive is a person who is able to, or rather who has got the capacity to gather information rapidly and thoroughly and accompany it with action.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. You've spoken about action and courage. My worry is what should come before action in order to avoid acting wrongly. Here you are in a business, you are action oriented, but most of the time when you act, the results are wrong. What should be avoided? Or what should you do, or what comes just before action in
True,
that line?
true. I agree with you. I think everything should have some sort of a chronological order in the way you approach. You set the priorities.
Right.
Like you have likely put it. What is important is that we must have plans.
Planning.
Put planning in place, proper planning in place. One, first and foremost. Then that planning will have come as a result of the vision or the dream that you have, which you would want to achieve.
Right.
And then when you are set in those aspects, then you should not make those compilations and put them together as like we have said. I think it's imperative that you accompany such things with action. You start acting on them. And with that action, like I've said, some other responses are going to follow. But if you were just to start talking about them, just singing about them, just writing about them, just praying about them, and folding your arms and legs and doing nothing about it, those things will go nowhere. They will start rotting on the shelf.
Right.
Because you haven't had that, of awakening the action in yourself and making sure that you put these things to movement, so that you start locomoting, you start acting on them and get what you want out of whatever that you had planned initially. I think that is the stages that I would want to look at it, that should be followed.
Planning. Okay. I agree with you. You plan, then you act, because no matter how good your business plan is, if you don't act upon it, nothing works out.
Yes.
Yes. Just to move on a little bit. Here you are. You've got this courage, or you are fearless in the way you are handling your business. What are some of the common obstacles that may hinder your action to be positive?
Common obstacles could be many. You see, sometimes we talked previously here on a certain program that I appeared some time back.
Right.
To say that obstacles sometimes is being lazy yourself at an individual level. Laziness should not be entertained. Second, there are also obstacles in terms of the environmental challenges that you are surrounded with on the market. The third obstacle could be that you feel that you don't have what it takes in terms of the skills, the calibers, the training, and everything else that comes with the confidence to act. That in itself is a challenge, and several others. But I think that we should forget about the emotions and act at the task at hand. Because you learn that a man or a person or a business entity that waits for inspiration, external inspiration to act, will not achieve anything. Because great men make their own inspiration. And they make their own inspiration because they feel that they have got something at hand. There is a certain task at hand which needs to be achieved.
Right.
So in the process, they are going to do things without, without waiting for external inspiration. I like what one of the authors said, Oliver Holmes, to say that life is action and passion, and we have got to share our actions and our passions at the peril of being judged not to have lived. So meaning that life makes much more sense and becomes much more exciting if we are able to share our actions and our passions with the people that we interact with in the environment. And having said that, I think another author once said that let's not pray for the tasks equal to our powers. Pray for our powers equal to the task.
The other way around.
The other way around. And meaning that, our miracle is not going to be in the doing of our job, but we have to be a miracle ourselves. Meaning that ourselves have got to do that missing link, which makes the whole, chain of success to be accomplished, or the whole chain of achievement to be accomplished. And you see, the other thing that we need to note is the fact that we shouldn't worry about what other people say about us. Instead, we have got to get busy doing something and to accomplish something that others are going to admire, and do it honestly. You see, and that is the importance of action. And when we are doing our part in terms of action, we shouldn't be worrying about the future. Because when we have done our level best and we have put in our level best, we need to leave the future where it belongs. And let future to take care of itself. Because we have done our level best in terms of acting. You see what I mean? And when we know that we have done our level best, what will follow next is that before you know it, we'll start getting back the responses and the feedback based on the action that we have done. And before we know it, people will start calling us to say, look, let's do this together. Oh, there's this business for you. Are you able to supply? Are you capable of managing this? And you're able to transact and make money out of it. And like if you were just sat doing nothing. I think that is the way I'm able to stress on such kind of a question that you asked.
Okay. So, there are people who are slow in making a decision. In other ways, in taking action. And you find that that affects their business. They come to realize after things have already happened, or maybe their friends have moved on because they decided at that particular time, or they decided on time. What does it take to be action-oriented?
Yes, important. I think when we are doing our plan, we shouldn't incorporate time. I mean, we have to incorporate time. Time is a big factor because you must know when is this required to be done.
Right.
Because if you haven't incorporated the aspect of time in your planning, it means that, like you are saying, you are not going to be right on time. So I think that is the major ingredient. And I think the other thing that we need to know is that we need to identify the need on the market as well as the environment in which we are going to operate, and get to know the space as well as the time frame in which such a need is more pressing on the target market. Because you might try to respond to a need or provide whatever is required based on the demands and the needs of the market, when probably, you know, tastes have changed on the market. So we must identify the need. And in business terms, a need is unfulfilled or unmet requirement of a customer. So, and they said that, you know, success or achievement will only favor, or rather, an opportunity will only favor a prepared mind, or rather, a ready company or a ready person who is able to take up that opportunity. Meaning that we must prepare ourselves fully. And when we are already prepared, when that opportunity emerges, it's likely that we are going to take it up and achieve what we are supposed to achieve at a time when we are required to achieve such a thing.
Okay. Yeah, quite interesting there. You know, another thing that I want us to look at here is one who's doing business, and it's SME, is a small, medium, enterprise. How important is teamwork, especially if you are more than one who are in that business? How important is teamwork before you take action?
Teamwork is imperative. Teamwork has always been very decisive. You know, I do know that the biggest challenge that we have talked time and again about entrepreneurs is because they think that they own their businesses, they are in ownership, and yet they should preside, or rather prevail, over the affairs of their running of a business. And probably they are the ones who have the final say and the final decision over the running of the affairs of their own businesses. But I think that might limit us in a certain way. And I think this is the advice that we need to tell the people who are in business out there, to say that, you know, nothing immense, nothing that stirs people's blood, nothing that is able to, you know, make people move has ever been accomplished by a single individual. We need the collaboration of other people. We need the input of other people as a teamwork for us to, you know, produce much bigger, you know, much huge results in whatever that we are doing. And yet you also find that if there are a lot of things as business expands, if there are a lot of things that need to be done, not within the course of the day, but even within the course of a period of a week or a month, you find that you are going to be overloaded if you are going to take everything on yourself. And that is why it is important that even business people who perceive themselves to be SMEs, as business entrepreneurs, should learn the aspect of delegating some of the things to other people, so as to lighten themselves of the burden. And as you lighten yourself of a certain burden, you are going to increase on the speed in terms of the pace at which you are supposed to move. But imagine it's like a boat floating on the waters, and it is overloaded in it. It is not going to move at a faster pace or at a much faster speed because of the overload. But as you start lightening it out, because if you don't lighten it out, it might end up sinking in the waters. You see what I mean? But as you lighten it up, it does not only float nicely on the waters, but it increases the speed at which it's supposed to. Same applies to the business. When you lighten yourself, because there are other people helping out who are putting their own input, you find that even the acceleration, the pace and the speed at which your business is likely to move will be much more faster than if you were doing everything as an individual alone. I think that is the importance of teamwork. We need the input of other people and the collaboration of other people for us to create. We talk about the signage every time as a business terminology, to say that signage can only come as a result of the input of other people, and that probably does not only increase the speed but also help the expansion of the business and for the business to grow at a much faster pace.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, let me take you now to risk taking within the framework of action. You know, there are people who have taken risks and they have made it, and there are people who have taken risks and they have failed. You know, at what level should you take a risk?
Well, me, I've always said the way I look at risk, I think this is my perspective. The way I look at risk is like anything that you do in life has got a risk, irrespective of how small it might look or how big it might look. I think it just depends on an individual person involved, of at which level of a risk could you want to undertake. Because I've seen that even people who take small risks, they have got life challenges on their way. But except that there is this notion of saying small problems, small challenges, small problems, small money, and etc., etc., and big money, bigger problems, and bigger challenges.
The higher the risk, the higher the reward.
The higher the risks, the higher the reward, and that's where I was coming to. Meaning that I think that when you take much bigger risks, of course, it's a question of life and death. On the other side, there may be death. On the other side, there may be life.
Right.
But I think it's important that as you are taking a risk, you take a calculated risk. And as you are taking a calculated risk, you also focus much on the positives, much on your strength, and ignore the negative aspect, and ignore the weaknesses that you might have. Because if you put your mind on your strengths and you put your mind on the positives, you find that even the outcome is likely to be more on the positive side, and more from on your strength side. And when you cross the bridge, I think you are going to reap far much more bigger rewards than somebody who might have been, paralyzed by fear. Somebody who might have gotten frozen as a result of, fearing to act. I think that we must create a situation where we stay ourselves to action, and not only act on small things, but I think let's inculcate in ourselves the attitude of thinking big. And not only thinking big, but also, looking at things with a positive outlook. Because when you have positive outlook of life yourself, you are going to attract positive things on your way. Because I do know that from my personal experience that no person ever wants to associate with a person who is negative in life. Because people have got so much problems in their personal lives that you may not have your personal problems yourself as an individual, but probably people surrounding you will be bringing problems to you. And they expect that they have to be encouraged. Beyond being encouraged, they have to be helped in a practical sense. And that is where action becomes very important. Do not only encourage people in words, but act practically. And beyond acting practically yourself as an example, show them that you do not only solve things through talking every day, talking about them every day, and also writing about them every day, but you solve issues through action, by acting. And action is very important, because whatever you do that lacks action will never produce anything in this life. I think that is very important, why everything that we do must be accompanied with action. And we must turn to be people who are action oriented, as men of action. Businesses that have been permeated in everything that we do. Our business should be permeated with a lot of action. And only then are we going to be the businesses that are able to achieve things and become successful, because achievement in itself is success.
Right. Okay. There are people who act on impulse and at times negatively. This takes me to the point that you brought in on belief, self-belief. You need to believe in yourself. But there's always that fear which encompasses most people. How can you overcome fear before you act?
Yeah, I think like we have talked about overcoming fear. We have said that action itself cultivates courage within a person. You find that if you act, that fear that you had initially will go away. And this is why, they said that a man who wants to, overcome all objections before he acts is not a man of action. We must act as we breathe. And as we act, like I've said, other responses will come. And in the process, before we know it, we'll be there to attain and achieve the things that we are supposed to achieve. And I think action covers each and everything that we are talking about. You see what I mean? Because if we don't act in the first place, we are going to not only fear, but we'll have a lot of anxieties. But not only anxieties, there will be a lot of things that we are not going to know because we have failed to act. But as we step out to act, what will happen is that even things that looked seemingly impossible from afar, because we didn't have the feel of it, we didn't have an experience of it. Mr. Chilandani, there are things that when we are perceiving from afar, the interpretation that we might have might be very different from when we go and feel it, experience it. We find that our perception from a distance is very different from when we go through it ourselves and experience it. And that changes the way we think about such things. And that changes even the fears that we might have had. So to me, it's important that we step out and act and have the real experience of the thing that we look in a distance. And in that way, it will create a change in the way we perceive those things from a distance. And it will also remove the fear that we had and give us that courage and the confidence and everything that we are supposed to have in order to achieve and be successful. And that can only happen if we are able to act on such things. And that is what makes action to be above everything else that we do. You can have all sorts of ingredients in order to achieve. You can have the better skills, better education, lot of other things that are required within the package of the ingredients. But if you lack action, those things are not going to mount to anything.
Right. Is action inborn, or is something that one can learn to be active?
I like what you have said. I like what you have said. You know why I'm saying I like what you have said? Right. It's because, most of the things that happen in life, it's not everything that is inborn. Most of the things we learn them as we experience life, right, as we grow up, and that is the importance of role modeling. Sometimes we want to copy from those, good, outstanding examples that we interact with, the way they do things. We want to copy. So we are able to learn as third parties. Not only learning as third parties, but I think also training itself does add value to our lives. Parentage and guidance, also add value in our lives. So to be action-oriented, you must associate with people who are action-oriented. The principle of association is very important, right, because we become like the crowd that we run with is. If you are constantly associate with people who do nothing, you also start doing nothing in your life. But if you constantly associate with people who are on fire to do things, they want to act, they want to achieve something out of life, and you are ever rubbing shoulders with them and you are challenging one another. There's a principle in the Bible that stands up to date to say that an iron sharpens an iron. If you are an iron, Mr. Chilandan, and I'm an iron, and we are associating with one another, we are sharpening one another, it means that we are learning from one another. And that is part of competition. And that is why I encourage competition. People who fear competition do not rise to higher heights because they are afraid. They don't want, they are ever, in a cocoon, in a box. But people who are competitive, they are challenging one another, they are teaching one another. And where you allow competition to thrive, people are going to, develop at a much faster pace than you didn't anticipate. And before you know it, Mr. Chilandani, because of such kind of an environment, if we were all running our own businesses with a lot of competition, you find that your business is not only going to prosper alone, because you have also challenged the people surrounding you with their own businesses. They would want to, come to your level, and you are also wanting to outcompete them. Before you know it, if that competition is healthy, you are not going to start cannibalizing one another. But your company are going to develop at a much faster pace and at a speed level. And we should be talking of, a developed nation with a lot of businesses doing fine.
Right. As we wind up, what could be your final remarks, just in case somebody has just joined us on this program?
Yeah, my final remarks is that I think we should not just dream, we should not just visualize, we should not just plan and talk about it and, just write about it. We have to accompany everything we do with action. God created everything of our bodies with a purpose. They are not just decoration, Mr. Chilandan. God created us with our mouth, or with my mouth, in order that I'm able to talk. It's not a decoration. I have to use it to negotiate business. God created my hands so that I can use them to touch, to lift things, you see. Created my legs so that I'm able to move and kick. So I should not fold these things and do nothing and don't make use of them. God is going to punish me for it, because when time for judgment comes, He's going to question me. Why didn't you make use of the things that I created you with a purpose to use? And they were not meant for a decoration. So what I'm saying is that let's make our whichever tool that God has created for us, to accompany it with action. And as we act, as we go into that action, we are going to produce the results that we are supposed to produce and achieve and have success. And at the end of the day, we should not be the people who should just sit down and complain and do nothing, thinking that if you are doing nothing and just complaining, nothing will ever happen in a vacuum. There must be somebody who's pushing things, somebody who's acting on things, somebody who's able to stir up things, stir up that lying giant, not only within yourself, even within other people. Right. And it saddens me, Mr. Chilandan, to get to a graveyard today and find that some people have died with a lot of potentials. Unused brains locked within themselves because they never stirred that up. And they had no people they associated with, or rather who came across their path, who could have stirred up such a lying giant within themselves. And you bury a human resource so rich, so fertile, untouched virgin land within themselves. Now imagine if they had come across, you passed through such a person, or you came across such a path of a person, you could have stirred up that lying giant so that whatever that is locked within themselves should come out and be fully utilized, their potentials fully maximized, so that even when they are being laid there on the last day, when God has called them to go and rest, they will know that they had already emptied everything. They gave out everything to the society. They gave out everything to humanity. They contributed that value. And when you bury a person who has been fully utilized, that virgin land has been maximized, it has been emptied. Even when you are laying him down to say, rest in peace, for sure he's going to rest in eternal peace, because God knows that if truly that person is done, and God has called him to rest because he's fully utilized.
Lewis, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, viewers, that's all we had for you on this segment of a business interview. God said, let them have dominion. What is in your hand? Utilize it. Today the topic was, why should action be the core issue in business undertaking? I'm Evans Sandali Mutanshi, taking you back to Steve to wrap up the program.